All right. Yes, we are live everywhere. So hello, everyone. We are live here on our webinar platform and also on our SME Banking TV, so on our YouTube channel. And if you are watching us on YouTube and you would like to participate in the discussion, so please register by the link you see in the stream description to have the possibility to ask questions to our speaker. So let's start. My name is Olena Gryniuk. I'm CEE Director at the SME Banking Club, and I will be your host today. And today we speak about e-invoicing and digital invoice management. And my guest today is Katalin Kauzli, co-founder and business development director at Partner Hub, the provider of e-invoicing solution. Welcome, Katalin.
Hello, everyone. Hello, Olena.
All right, before we go to our topic, let me mention very shortly some organizational information. So our webinar is planned for 45 minutes. We are recording this webinar, so right after we finish, you will receive the video and the presentation as well. And we start from the presentation, and afterwards we will have a Q&A session. And you are welcome to ask your questions and type them in the chat, and then we will be able to answer them. So let's go to our topic. So e-invoicing and digital invoice management, and we've been discussing this topic for several years already in the context of the SME customers, but actually we can say that this topic is relevant now for all the customer segments. I would say. And let's actually discuss today how the offering of e-invoicing as a service for the customers, but also how invoice data can be used to create the value both for the banks and the customers. And especially taking into account that the invoicing is becoming mandatory in the European Union countries during the next 2-3 years, and actually other countries outside the EU also started to implement and make it mandatory. So, Katalin, I'm passing it over to you at once. So let's start from your presentation. I know you have several also case studies to show. So let's start from that and then have a discussion. You're welcome.
Yes. Thank you, Olena. So thank you for coming to this webinar today. We will be discussing how different segments of the bank can be used, can be served by using invoice data, and whether it is worth for banks to launch an own invoicing solution, for example, for the SME segment, or just stay behind and use data sources from the third-party data sources. Just a brief introduction. We have a white label digital invoice management solution, and you can set up digital invoice management services using our technology. And we are also at home with the topic when invoicing and financial services is integrated. And we have defined and we have use cases for 3 different areas, and we will discuss more in depth these today. One is for the SME banking segment, is a business finance assistant, which incorporates digital invoice management and banking functionalities. So it's kind of a new generation of SME banking application. For corporate customers, e-invoicing and request to pay integrated with each other can be a good use case. And for the retail customers, if there are digitally available invoices and receipts, then the bank can provide this service, to present and store these services for the retail customers as well. I am starting many times with this slide because I think this is the key to understanding of the importance of invoicing and invoice data in banking. If you see, this is the representation of data sets in the purchase to pay or order to cash process. And you can see that the invoice data is the widest and deepest data source during the process, which means that if you want to pay something or if you want to finance, and then you are always going back to the invoice data, which is also true from the other aspect. Each invoice must be paid at once, or there must be a source of financing from which the invoice is paid. So that is how invoicing and payments and invoicing and financing activities are closely related to each other. And what is also worth mentioning that in the paper-based world, these activities could not be connected with IT systems because it was very difficult, but the technology now enables that these activities are provided in an end-to-end single solution as well. And the data can flow between invoice data and banking data seamlessly. So this is the thing, and this is the opportunity which can be captured by banks and financial institutions. And yes, so this is the representation of the invoice. You can see that with the introduction of invoicing, now there is still a PDF invoice, which can be either printed out or viewed or saved and stored. But behind this PDF invoice, which is a human readable version of the invoice, there is always a structured data invoice, which stores all the invoice data in a data file in a structured format, which can be processed by machines and which enables the automation of the invoice processing. And this is where we are arriving, that digital invoice management and core banking services complement each other. And if banks and financial service providers want to provide an end-to-end solution, then they should start thinking about providing value-added services, or at least about integrations with partners who provide these digital invoice management services, and they will need to have the capabilities to integrate with these third-party providers or and manage the invoice data which is given by these third-party data providers. And Olena mentioned that why we are talking about this today is that because e-invoicing is becoming mandatory in more and more countries worldwide, but also in Europe, a lot of countries are introducing mandatory invoicing, and this means that structured invoice data will be available. And as I mentioned, each invoice is a payment or financing opportunity for the bank. So the bank must capture this data and data source to make its operations and processes more seamless. So this also means that if you have a structured invoice data, then you can digitalize your processes. You can initiate or request payments based on the invoice data, or you can initiate a financing process based on invoice data. So there will be no manual input necessary from the customer side, which means on one hand cost saving for the bank because you don't have to deal with paper. On the other hand, it will be a seamless payment or financing experience for the customer. And if you as a bank don't do this, then others will definitely find this opportunity. So that's why we are having this webinar, so that we raise the awareness about this issue. And if you have the data in place, then obviously you can use it either for risk modeling or segment modeling, and you can You can also use the invoice data for cash flow projections to offer financing for retail and SME customers alike. I just put together a couple of ideas and use cases how invoice data can be used by the bank, and you can see that all, I would say, major objectives of a bank can be fulfilled by invoice data. So if we are talking about customer insight, customer engagement and loyalty, or launching new services and realizing new revenue streams, or having cost efficiency costs, then invoice data is something that is very useful everywhere. Just a couple of examples. So when we are talking about customer insight, if a bank starts for retail customers, for example, an invoice presentment service based on digital invoice data, then if the retail customer gets its energy or utility bills in the invoice inbox of the bank, then using the data, the item level detailed data, the bank can, for example, propose savings on the energy and utility bills. And if you have these invoice data, then running the models, the bank will be able to provide personalized questions and recommendations how to save more money, how to optimize spending. And if you are optimize your spending, then you will obviously have more money to save. So this is something that is based on the simple fact of, or a simple service as an invoice presentment for retail customers. Talking about invoicing and integration of invoicing and request to pay, if the invoice data is connected with the payment data, then it is a secure and a new way for payments, which is a seamless customer experience and which gives more control and more information about bill payments, for example. If a customer has its bills in the bank, then the bank can actually help the customer calculate the carbon footprint based on the actual spending patterns. And it's another possibility is just to set up customized loyalty programs with merchants based on the actual spending of the customer. So these are ideas and opportunities which are not here yet, but if you will have the invoice data in your bank, then they will be absolutely reachable goals and launchable services. What is more relevant now is that if you have the invoice data, you can provide invoice finance or supply chain finance for your SME and corporate customers. You can provide integrations for merchants for leasing or BNPL options, for example, with using request to pay and integrated with e-invoicing. And if you integrate e-invoicing and request to pay, you can solve for the automatic reconciliation of invoices and payments for SMEs and corporate customers. If we are going to the cost efficiency side, I think I already talked about it, that if you have access to structured digital data, then a fully digital service model will be enabled for the bank, which will significantly decrease your service costs for the SME customer base, for example. And if you use invoice data in your credit scoring, then you can decrease these costs because your credit scoring model will be much more accurate. So, you will make a better pricing for your customers on one hand, and you will be able to have better credit risk price built into your own pricing. So these are just, ideas. Some of them are closer, some of them from an implementation perspective, some of them are more remote, but this shows, I think, the value and the potential in using invoice data. And how we structured in our minds and our offering for the banks based on the segments, and this slide also shows the complexity of a service offering. So these are the offerings that are invoice related and that are customer facing services. And the least difficult is just to provide an invoice inbox or invoice repository for retail customers. Here, the bank only presents the invoices and just collects all the invoices from third-party data sources. If we integrate digital invoice management or e-invoicing with request to pay, then this can be a good offering for medium and large enterprises, but also for SMEs, where the payment request can be generated from the invoice data of the ERP solution of the banking customer. And this means that the bank still doesn't have to generate an e-invoice. It just uses third-party data sources. But if it has the e-invoice and the payment request, then it can track the whole payment transaction afterwards and can solve for the automatic reconciliation of the invoice and the payment request. And this can have a 95% savings potential compared to paper-based processes. So we think that this is a new use case. And the most complex offering is for the SME customers when the bank does not only do these services that I mentioned below, but the bank actually launches an online invoicing or e-invoicing solution when it gets to the detailed process of issuing an invoices. This is the most complex use case because this part is already regulated from how it must be done in certain countries. It requires also connections with the tax authorities, and it can have multiple specific customer journeys for special invoicing use cases. So this is the most difficult thing. However, we have the technology to help banks with all of these use cases, and we are also in the process of making it easier and easier for banks to start these services. I would just quickly show an example how on one hand, the invoice inbox for retail customers and the integration of e-invoicing and request to pay for enterprise customers work. So I will just show this demo video. So you can see the integration of e-invoicing and request to pay. We will be in an in-store payment situation where there is a waiter who will collect the payment, and there will be a guest who will pay. So there will be the merchant and the consumer side, and we will show how invoicing can be integrated with request to pay in such a solution. So you will see the both views, both for the restaurant and the customer as well. First, the customer logs into its system. It will show a QR code and enables the payment request functionality. With this, the customer can be identified. So when the merchant, in this case the waiter, scans the QR code of the customer, then it will be able to send the invoice and the payment request to that specific customer without giving any card data or any other identification. Now we are going to log into the restaurant's view. So the waiter will just scan the QR code of the guest, and then after that, yes, so we are scanning the QR code, and when the QR code is scanned, then the customer is identified and the waiter can select which table to invoice. After that, the invoice is created automatically, and in parallel with the invoice, a payment request is also created, and the invoice and the payment request is sent to the guest's banking invoice inbox. Now we will switch to the guest side to see how it looks. So this is the guest side. We can see that there is a new invoice about from the restaurant, and the guest will approve the payment request. Now we are switching to another application, which is a payment request application, and then the payment request is approved here. Obviously, when it is done by the bank, then the two applications would not be separated. This is a European request to pay provider called AnswerPay. Now the guest approves the payment request, so the payment is also triggered by the approval of the payment request. So now we are switching back to, yes, you can see that the invoice was paid. And after that we are switching back to the restaurants view. So the restaurant application, these are the applications that can be both launched by the banks or provided by the banks. You can see that the invoice open amount is 0, and you can see that the invoice status is paid. So this is how the integration of payment request can be solved for an in-store payment, but the same can be done for the e-commerce transactions, for BNPL offerings or B2B payments. If you are interested more in the use case, then I am happy to talk about more in details on a separate session. The other use case that I wanted to show you today is that how you can process B2B invoice automatically, and how you can initiate a payment transaction. In this video, you will see the OTP eBiz solution for which we are providing the backend. You can see that after the customer login, there are functionalities for the dashboard solution. You can see the feature set for the dashboard. So there is a dashboard which the SME can see. This contains the revenues, the expenses of the company, and also the cash flows. And these are always presented based on the actual data that is in the system. You can see that there is the invoice management functionality. There is always incoming invoices and outgoing invoices. So all the invoices can be stored in the bank, but also issued in the bank. Now we are at the invoice inbox, and in the invoice inbox, the customer can view its invoices, and because it is a structured invoice data, with a click it can approve it. And when the customer approves and categorizes the invoice, then it will be able, so the system will automatically process the invoice itself. And after that, operations on the invoice data can be carried out, which means that it can be paid or financed just with a couple of clicks. Now we are going to initiate a payment transaction from the invoice data. So if we are going to the transfers menu, then if we are clicking on the bill, then just by clicking on the bill, the system will prepare the payment instruction. And so the payment is instruction, after that it can be finalized and the payment is carried out or is executed by the bank as a credit transfer. So this is also a customer journey which is very easy for an SME company. So the SME company doesn't have to input the data manually for transfers. It just clicks on the invoices and they can be really paid with a couple of clicks. So this is very convenient functionality for SME customers. And if the SME customer has all its invoices, both outgoing invoices and incoming invoices in the system, then it will have a one-stop shop for managing all its financial affairs and can have real-time information about its business matters. So this was the invoice receipt and payment part for the SME offering, and I will just show the trickiest part of the e-invoicing offering, which will be the invoice issuance process. So this means that the SME can issue its invoices from the banking application, and this will be good for the bank because then it will have all invoice data also from the SME company. So it will have a 360-degree view of the SME. And if you have, for example, the customer invoices, then you can provide the invoice financing or factoring for the SME customer. So now we are just logging into the system, and then you can see the same functionality. So outgoing invoices, incoming invoices, invoice issuance, banking data. Now you can see another dashboard. This is the dashboard of the Bupa solution, which we are also developing. This is a Hungarian bank too. So now you will see the invoice issuance process. And in the system, we set up the invoice issuance process in a way that it can be configured very easily to any country and any tax regulation. So it will be much easier to set up such a solution with us than starting from scratch. So I would, recommend to use some kind of service provider, if not us, then others, for you not to start from scratch to develop this, because what we have as an experience from our current customers, that this can be the trickier part. Anyway, you can see that all the invoice data are filled, and then an invoice is being issued. But before issuing the invoice, you can have a preview the invoice, and if everything is all right, then you can issue the invoice. And once the invoice is issued, it can be sent to your customer via the preferred channel. Now this will be an email sending, but if you have an inside solution, then it can be obviously delivered within the system or with API or any other data exchange mechanism that is required on the customer side. So you can see that the new invoice appears in the outgoing invoicing list, and the tax authority data submission is also happening. So this is the invoice issuance part of the service. I just quickly go through the reconciliation of invoices and payments. So there is a reconciliation engine in the system. So if you issued an invoice and then the payment happens, then the system proposes the most relevant transactions to be reconciled. So this is also very useful for SME companies. And just a glimpse how to work with third-party data sources. If you are starting working with invoice data, then these data sources can be other invoicing solutions, can be accounting software, ERP solutions, or tax authorities. It will be just a very short example how to work with structured invoice data. So it will be a PDF invoice which is uploaded into the system, and then if you enter the partner's name and the invoice details, then you will see that the Hungarian Tax Authority provides an API service based on which the relevant invoice data can be asked from the tax authority. And if you provide these two data, then all the other data will be provided by the tax authority. Sometimes the tax authority doesn't ask for the payment data, so that need to be put into manually into the solution. So this is how you can get invoice data from third-party systems. If we are not talking about tax authority but an invoicing solution, then the principle for the data exchange would be the very same. So I was just talking about, about the customer-facing services and what are the services that you can launch for your customers. And now I would like to just highlight what are the capabilities that you need to manage invoice data related use cases. So even if you are not launching a customer facing service, but you want to work with invoice data, or if you are not launching an e-invoicing service but want to just provide an invoice presentment solution for your retail customers, then you will still need capabilities like presenting invoice data. You will need to be able to work with structured invoice data. You will need to work and standardize various invoice data structures and process various invoice data formats, and you will need to be able to work with invoice data from third-party data sources, and you will also need integration capabilities. So these are things that are needed if you want to deal with invoice data, if you are not launching an e-invoicing service for your customers. And I just on this slide I summarized whether it's worth for you to launch an e-invoicing solution for your SME customers or not, exactly because of the fact that this is the trickiest part. It is not always worthwhile to put the large investment both in terms of monetary resources and time and team and capabilities. So it might not be for everyone to launch an own invoicing service. It might be a good idea to partner with third-party providers or just to have access to the invoice data from third-party sources. Because if you, so what is the driver for you to launch an e-invoicing solution for SME customers is that if you have SMEs as a core of your strategies, if you want to become the primary bank of the SME customer, if you want to provide an end-to-end service around financial administration and you want to become a financial one-stop shop for your SME customers, and you want to become an ecosystem orchestrator, then it is a good use case or a very good use case to start or launch an e-invoicing solution for your SME customers. And what are the expenses or additional efforts that you will need to think about whether you are ready to do this? You will need to understand all the details of invoicing and how an invoice system must be set up. You will need to define all invoice-related customer journeys, and you will need to be prepared to maintain your invoicing solution from a compliance perspective. Good news is that we can with this, all of these tasks, but still these will be efforts that will need to be taken by the bank somehow. And just to mention with whom we have been working with, we have been supporting OTP Bank, the Hungarian Bank Holding, and Banca Transilvania with launching business financial assistant for SME customers, and we have done a POC with Raiffeisen Bank Hungary for the integrating of invoicing and request to pay for corporate customers. So these are the experience we have, or this is the experience we have with banking, and today webinars was based on this experience that we have collected in the last, I would say, 5 or 6 years almost. And thank you very much. And if you have questions, just please let us know and ask the questions.
Yes, there are questions. Thank you very much, Katalin, for a great presentation and very important topic, that we've been discussing with you this topic for several years already. And I do consider that the e-invoicing should be included into the standard offer for the SME customers. I mean, I know that this first implementations even starting with OTP EBs, which was launched, I guess, 5 years ago, something like this.
Yes, more
when
than 6 years. Now it's going to be 6 years.
Yeah.
Yes.
When the banks were thinking about that as about invoicing as the implementation of the exactly beyond banking or value added services to differentiate on the market, because really this is becoming a competitive advantage when all the traditional banking services are digitalized already, and we know that all the transactions and currency exchange, everything you have in all the online and mobile bankings of all the banks. So this is not a differentiator, and such actually products that gives value for the business customers are becoming the ones that differentiate banks on the market. So banks started thinking from that, but now I guess, and this is becoming an offer which SMEs need actually. So this is real understanding of SME customer, of business customers now, I would say.
Yes.
Needs especially special SMEs. So let's I will get to the questions from our attendees, and then we'll discuss if you have time.
Yes.
Mine. The first question comes from Marta. Thank you for that. What is the source of tax rates for particular countries when you implement in different countries?
Yes. So there are the VAT laws, obviously, and these VAT laws so there are VAT laws, and there are laws regarding the accounting rules of the countries. So these are the two data sources, official data sources that you can work with. The good thing with us is that we can parameter each country very easily. So for us, it's not hard coding, but parametering the solution. So if the VAT rate is 18% or 17% or I don't know 25 or 27%, it does not matter really for us. We just need to know how much it is.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay, yes, the next one from Naveen. How are you managing the resourcing and staffing in terms of technology and niche skills? And if I can add to that question at
Yes.
once, actually, knowing and having all the experience that you shown with the banks that implemented actually this e-invoicing as a service for the SME customers as a first part, I see, as a first idea, and then already thinking about structured invoice data. Which actually resources are needed from the bank side? Because this is a project. I mean, this is yeah, a big project. So which resources are needed actually to create, to develop, to launch, but afterwards also, to sell and to monetize this offer, this product
Yes.
with the
Yes.
customers.
So I would say that a product owner is definitely needed, and the product owner team or business team, and I would say that is the most important from the bank side, because all the other capabilities, like the technical capabilities, are already there, and then this is kind of a new domain or new knowledge that the product owners need to be engaged with. So it's kind of that part is the extra mile from the bank side. And yes, what is important, I think, for the whole team is the understanding of the invoicing use case. So this is key, because there are some things that are mandatory from a legal perspective. Then the team must understand that they cannot define a customer journey which is not compliant with the law. So these are the things that need to be understood, but there are no special skills that are needed. So this is
Mhm,
not like brain surgery, I would say.
mhm,
So this is simply a new use case which must be understood. And
mhm,
yeah, so from a sizing perspective, I would say a team of 10 to 20 people, is the whole team size to launch and manage such a project.
mhm, mhm.
And
Yeah,
yes,
all right. And yes, I mean, just thinking that I mean, what we see from from different countries, and that now when this invoicing is becoming mandatory, I mean, in many countries, of course, SMEs started to use in different sectors, I mean, in different proportions, invoicing. So this is kind of not new as an idea, but now when this is becoming mandatory, like all the businesses will have to choose the provider. So this is a no go that they will continue with the paper invoices. And banks, and this is a really great opportunity, actually this opportunity is now to become such a provider, because banks can be, and I think that semi customers believe here that the banks can be trusted providers here. And the most important thing is that it can be actually integrated with the transactional banking, at least, to make
yes,
it really this journey of usage of invoicing really smooth and pleasant and quick for the SMEs. Another question from Marta: if the e-invoicing will be required in European Union, this is still need to do OCR in the paper invoices? Oh,
no. So
this is actually mhm,
that is the best question, because
this
yes,
is
this
yeah,
is the
the
important
main
thing.
thing.
OCR will not be used if there are already invoicings and structured data invoices.
Mhm,
Then, and that is the good thing about invoicing, that if you have the invoice data, you will have 100 percent data accuracy, for reconciliation, for data recognition, and so on. So OCR will be obsolete technology once invoicing is there. So
Mm-hmm.
that is the good thing, and OCR will not be
Yeah, OCR is a
necessary.
nightmare,
Yes,
really. Like you
yes,
scan and you check, and this is a lot of manual job should be done.
yes,
And I think you showed in this example with OTP EB solution that actually this is done in this way, that the customer receives the invoice from the counterparty already in the system in this
yes,
structured way, not via the VCR, but in a truly electronic format. And
yes,
then it's really with no check-in manual checks, you pay it in 1-2 clicks, right?
yes. So that
This
is
is
the whole beauty of
this
it,
is the
that
community.
you
Yeah.
have the data in the background, the machines can work
Yeah.
in the background, and you just will have to click and the work is done instead of
Mm-hmm.
you, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
yeah, I previously I just checked to the question to answer from Naveen. So as far as I understand, Nexo is a digital asset, storage. So what we did a POC to integrate invoicing with smart contracts. So there, I think multiple use cases can be defined, how to manage invoicing and digital assets together. However, this is an area where where the tax authorities still need to keep up with the reality, because the e-invoicing regulations are not there yet, so that they can manage these digital assets. But if there is structured data on one side and structured data on the other side, it can be connected in many ways. So it will be new domain, how to deal with these, the sale of digital assets, and how you, I would say, how you implement the invoicing part for these digital asset transactions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But yeah, so this is again a very exciting and new area, which must be discovered, or must be, I don't know, yeah, must be
Mm-hmm.
discovered. What we did is that kind of we had a smart contract, and actually the completion of the smart contract already just triggered the issuance of the invoice. But a lot of use cases and journeys can be set up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right, and maybe the last question to discuss to wrap up is, let's probably discuss what are the opportunity of usage of structured invoice data when it is here, because as you mentioned, this is new. And I think yes, now actually this is the right time to think about that and to start their implementations to have it tomorrow, I would say, because this actually changes the way of the banking, actually, because
Absolutely, yes.
if the banks will have the access to the invoice data, and this can be connected with the transaction data, of course. And if you go further, and either the financial data in some countries are available, for example, or the banks are, by creating the ecosystem and by implementing the online accounting, for example, you have also the access to the financial data of the customers. I'm talking about business customers, SMEs. Then they have all the data for the customers, and that actually makes possible everything, the payments, as you the great example with payments request to pay. I think this is what SMEs actually need. You issue the invoice, you press the button, request the payment, and this is it. And we know that here in the Central Europe, only Hungary implemented, right, Hungarian banks, because this is obligatory, right? In
Uh,
Hungary and
like the real-time invoice data
Belgium. Mhm,
submission to the tax authority is mandatory since 2018. So yes,
mhm,
the banks recognize this and they launched such a solution. But yes,
mhm.
so recently I saw a presentation from Millennium BCP from
Portugal,
Portugal.
right?
Yes,
Mhm,
they exactly launched the same concept, like OTP, EBs, and
mhm,
Budapest Bank or Hungarian Bank Holding, and
mhm,
also I just checked. Lloyd's Bank in the UK has
mhm,
exactly the same solution.
mhm,
ICICI Bank in India has such a solution. So the
mhm.
most innovative banks have discovered this as a
Started
new
this, yeah.
opportunity.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. And then, right, as you mentioned that this with the structuring invoice data, it will go, the invoice will go, invoice data will go right to the tax authority. So it
Yeah,
means that the probability that invoice is fake, that this is a fraud invoice data is minimized here. So
minimized. Yes, exactly.
simplifies this
Yes.
simplifies invoice finance, factoring, right, all the receivable finance procedures. Then having all this data, we can then talk about real embedded finance, and the finance in the context of the customer business. So now when I issue the invoice, this is the right moment to offer me either a loan or the factoring. I mean, not tomorrow, not before that, but this is the very right moment where the
Yeah.
customer might
Olena, do
need.
you need the money now, or is it
Yes,
too
yes, yes.
late
Do you want to receive the payment
or
right now?
later? Yeah, yeah,
Yes, and not to wait while the counterparty will pay you.
yeah.
Then you mentioned also carbon footprint calculator, which is the next thing. With this becoming obligatory for the corporations, I think from this year, and for the SMEs from 25th or 26th year, and now to make this and even to receive a ESG certificate is a lot of manual job, and actually including the invoice and transaction data into these processes,
Yeah,
can
it's just,
automate.
it's have, how you say, it's like a no-brainer, I would say. If you have
Yeah,
the invoice data, then, you can set up the algorithms how to calculate, the
yeah,
carbon footprint of 1 kilogram bread, or,
yeah,
one server or whatever. Yes.
yeah, yeah. So a lot of use cases mm, can be implemented and by the banks. But to have this, what they should do right now? What is your suggestion for that?
They should,
What
yeah, I mean, they
they should
should
start
recognize that this is something that has, money in it.
now?
So they should recognize the potential, I think. And they should recognize the fact that if they are not doing it, then someone else will definitely do this.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Because the data is there, it's like, it's money on the street. If you
yeah,
don't take it, then someone else will take it. Or if you take it, or if you see a
yeah,
purse on the street, you can, you must pick it up, and you can still decide what to do with it, whether to keep it or go to the police. So that's another issue, but it's there. Someone will take it. If not
yeah,
you, then others will take the opportunity.
yeah, yeah. All right. So now this is a decision whether you take this money
Yes.
or not. All right. So on this sentence, I would suggest to wrap up today's webinar. Thank you very much, Katalin, for today's session.
Yeah.
Great as always. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much, attendees, and especially Marta, Naveen, and Olivier for your comment as well. Thank you for being active. Thank you. And if you will need some details, more details. We are staying in touch. We will send all the materials after the webinar. And thank you very much. And goodbye. See you next
Yeah.
time.
Thank you. See you soon.